So the first speaking secret you should know is that you want to fix the easy speaking dimensions first. Now, what do I mean by dimensions? So when you're graded on your speaking, there's a bunch of different dimensions, but let me simplify it. And let me ask you, which do you think is the easiest to improve? Your pronunciation, your grammar, vocabulary, structure, speaking speed, or prosody? Prosody is like the way that you speak, the music of it. If you need to improve your speaking, which do you think is the easiest to improve? What's going to be the fastest? And I'm going to tell you the answer. It's structure. So structure is going to be the first thing that you want to improve, because that's going to be the easiest thing to improve. And how do you improve structure? I'm going to talk about all these dimensions, I believe most of them, but let me start with structure. So how do you improve structure? Well, before I say that, the reason why we focus on structure is because when you focus on grammar or vocabulary or pronunciation or speech music, which is prosody, these are fossilized habits. These are things that you kind of have, since you're at a more advanced level, you've kind of have these strong habits in your in your mind that just kind of come out without thinking. So they're a much harder thing to fix. They are fixable, they are workable, but they're just harder. So structure is kind of the easiest thing to work on first. And the easiest way to work on structure is to have a template, is to memorize an introduction. The introduction is the most important part of your template. And the reason why that even if you don't want a template, I recommend an introduction. It's because the introduction helps you start, because on the TOEFL, you have a timer and it says, okay, you have to speak in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, speak. And speaking on command like that is very awkward, unnatural. We're not used to it. So almost always, if you don't know how you're gonna start, there'll be a moment where you have to think. You're like, okay, so, and then you start speaking. You don't want to waste a second of time when you're doing the TOEFL speaking. Every second counts. So you want to start strong, have an introduction planned for each of the 4 questions. Here are some different examples from question number 1. I have more examples here from question number 2, where you have to talk about a reading passage, and you have to start with the reading passage that announces a change on campus in particular, and then you talk about the change. This is for question 3, where you have to read about an academic topic, and then you listen to a lecture about it. You want to start with the reading. So if you know how you're going to start, it helps your structure. It helps you stay organized. This is for question 4, the last TOEFL speaking question, where you listen to a lecture and you talk about the topic. The professor goes into a ton of detail about the topic, which is, and then you define it. So you can use any of these. I recommend using the one that you feel most comfortable with, but just know how you're going to start. This is in the 26 Plus guide. It's a free PDF. It's like 25 pages long. You can download it, link in the description below. There are more examples and more templates that you can practice with. So the first secret, again, is to focus on dimensions that are easier to fix. Structure is easier to fix. And one way that you can help your structure a lot is to have an introduction prepared for each of them. Every second counts. So you want to make sure you start strong. And then after you work on your structure, you have a template. The next thing is to work on high frequency words and phrases. So in other words, you want to practice with vocabulary that you know you're going to have to say on test day. That's one of the good things about TOEFL speaking, at least, is that it takes the English language, this big, huge thing, and compresses it down to 4 questions. And so you don't have to remember all the words in English. You don't have to be a perfect English speaker, but you can perfect some words that you know you're going to have to say on test day. So what are some things you know you're going to have to say? Well, you're probably going to have to add information. So discourse markers. These are things like in addition, as a matter of fact, actually. Another discourse marker is when you're emphasizing, in fact, more importantly, or when you're ordering ideas. Another reason, secondly, she goes on to say, I sometimes call these transition words, but these are words that connect ideas. This is a big list. I wouldn't recommend you memorize all of these, but memorize a few for each category. So you know how you want to start when you want to give an introduction, when you give an example. Make sure your pronunciation is great. Like if you have trouble with the phrase in addition, you say it and you practice it and it sounds like in addition. You know, okay, it doesn't sound good. Let me say in fact. In fact is a lot easier for me to pronounce. I'm going to say in fact instead of in addition. Pick phrases that are easier for you to say. Don't try to be this perfect speaker. Make your life easier. Practice things that you know you're going to have to say. You also know that you'll have to use the template. So, I mean, you don't have to use it, but you should use one. And if you do use one, you have phrases that you know you're going to say. You know you're going to say, for example. You know you're going to have to say the reading passage. You're going to say in particular. You want to make sure that your pronunciation of these phrases is really good. You know you're going to have to say the man in the conversation. So make sure you say that very naturally. You don't want to say the man in the conversation is. You know you have to say this on test day, so practice this. Practice saying it in one breath. The man in the conversation is. These are phrases you know you're going to have to say. Make your life easier by practicing these high frequency phrases. You're going to have to say in the lecture. You're going to say according to the reading. You're going to say lecturer. This is a hard word to say. Lecturer. It has this two R sound. It's very difficult. You might say, okay, I don't want to say lecturer. My pronunciation is not so great. I'm going to always say professor instead. Have a plan for which words you want to use on test day. You're going to have to say topic. You're going to have to say mentions. And try to use these phrases goes on to say, goes on to say. Try to bring them together. Some other words that are very high frequency. This is from an old video I made, about 19 words you have to say on test day. And this is the question number, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And so you're gonna have to say these words. If you say interesting, like interesting, you have 4 syllables. Practice saying it with 3, interesting. You don't have to practice every word in English. Practice words that you know you're gonna have to say. You know you're going to have to say example. If you're saying example, you're not saying it correctly. Example. If you're a Spanish speaker and you always say university, like universidad, okay, so you're going to have to say university. You have to say this on test day. It's a really hard habit to fix because your whole life you've been saying universidad. That's okay. This one word you want to say university. You want to try to not worry about the other words that you have trouble pronouncing. Focus on this word. 20 more words that I think are really helpful. I teach these for writing class for uncountable nouns because they're common uncountable nouns. So people have trouble with articles. But these are also very useful words that you'll probably have to use, not probably, but you might have to use in the speaking. Especially words like maybe research or technology or information or evidence. These are good words to know, especially for writing, but maybe even for speaking. Now, some students, when they struggle with vocabulary, they think they have to learn a lot of new words and phrases. You could do that, but just know that when you learn new words and phrases, a lot of times it sounds very unnatural. So just be a little careful with trying to use new vocabulary. Instead, focus on high frequency words and phrases you will definitely say on test day. And that will help your pronunciation, your vocabulary, and your speech music, your prosody. So, and as I mentioned already, I encourage students to create their own templates based on their knowledge of the tests, personal style, and preferred discourse markers. So make your own templates so you can feel really comfortable with what you're going to say. All right, and again, it's in the 26 plus guide. The next thing, the next secret I wish more students would know is that your speaking is judged based on 3 minutes and 45 seconds. I really want you to think about this for a minute. There are 4 questions. You are judged on these 4 questions on if you are fluent in English, if you're a fluent English speaker. That's 3 minutes and 45 seconds of speech. That is approximately, here's my math skills, about 530 words, okay? If you're speaking at a good pace. You are judged on your speaking based on 500 words, give or take. This is an incredible opportunity for you to show that you have an advanced level of speaking if you focus on studying for this test. Because again, it's just 500 words. Think of all the tens of thousands of words in English and all the different combinations and grammar and books and all these things. It can feel very, very daunting and very scary because there's always new words to learn. There's always things that you don't know, idioms you don't know, expressions you don't know. And same for me. I mean, I'm a native speaker. There's always something new that I don't know. But this test, you can prove your English in just 3 minutes and 45 seconds. That's why this is important. That's why you want to focus on these things: structure, grammar, vocabulary. Even, I'm not going to speak about it here, but even your template helps with grammar because you simplify your grammar. A template also helps with your speed because you can basically structure your response and know what should come first, what should come second, and how much you should include in each part. Okay. Very important. If you need more help with this, if you have taken the test before and didn't get your speaking score, one thing a lot of students find helpful is group classes. They're usually in a group of 8 or less. Usually it's about 5 students. It takes a month. There are about 6 classes, and you work with other students who are advanced English speakers that are just struggling to get that 26. You have a teacher to give you feedback. You have support if you need questions. You have all the questions you have all the TOEFL speaking questions you need, and also all the questions you need answered are there as well. It's not for newcomers to the TOEFL, and it's not really for students who have like 6 months or a year to prepare. This is more for if you have about a month to prepare, you've taken the test before and you didn't get your score, and you need that just extra little help. Check it out, speaking group classes. And go to this link in the description because this price is only for the YouTube audience. Let me go to the 5th and final secret, which is that word count is a big part of your score. Now you might know this already, but let me explain it in a little more detail. And actually, I'll give you one thing you might find surprising about this too. So these are the scoring dimensions from TOEFL Speaking AI. This is courtesy of My Speaking Score, a great site that I recommend to students that gives you feedback on your speaking based on the speech rater that they use on TOEFL. So there are different dimensions, but one thing about the dimensions is that some are worth quite a bit. They have a big impact on your score. And some have very little impact on your score, like this repetitions. I'm not going to talk about each one, but your speed, your speaking rate, how fast you speak, and how often you pause, and how you can bring words together. This is all about, if you can do all these 3 things well, you can say a lot of words. You can say more words per minute. So this has a big impact on your score. Now, if you start speaking really quickly, this happens a lot to students from South Asia. They can speak very quickly, but then other parts of their score goes down, maybe pronunciation, maybe syllables, other things, vowel sounds, not syllables, vowel sounds goes down. So there are things that might get hurt if you speak too fast. But the idea is that it has a big impact on your score as long as it doesn't hurt your pronunciation and other parts of your speaking. These are different ways to improve your speaking speed. It's kind of complicated, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but we talked about templates, we talked about phrases. A lot of people know about shadowing, so I would recommend you do that. Reduce sounds, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of reduced sounds right now. So what that means is that there are some phrases that we tend to bring together. So for example, a lot of sounds like a lotta. When I was. These are question 1. Okay, so to be honest. That is why, that's why. So these are little things that you can kind of link together. This is for questions 2 to 4. Talks about. Types of. You don't have to do any of this, but these are just little tips for you to improve your speed. When practicing your pronunciation and in practicing your speed, definitely record your voice and repeat the same sentence multiple times, just 2 or 3 times, okay? And focus on high frequency words and phrases, which we talked about already with secret number 3. But now, time to actually practice these secrets. I'll put a link to a video where you can practice some TOEFL speaking questions, and I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.